Ex-wife returns pregnant. With millionaire's baby, his mistress can't handle the truth. When Serena Hastings walked out of Jacob Whitmore's life 3 years ago, everyone assumed their story was over for good, especially since he'd already moved on with his glamorous mistress, Felicity. But late one afternoon, a single knock on Jacob's elaborate Beverly Hills mansion door upends every assumption. There, belly swollen with impending motherhood, stands the ex-wife herself. Word spreads instantly. The child is Jacob's. Felicity's perfect world is shaken. She thought she knew all of Jacob's secrets, but she never suspected this. Brace yourself for shocking confessions, a ruthless power struggle, and the hidden truths that refuse to stay buried. Jacob Whitmore had always been a man who knew how to keep his emotions under tight control. Raised on the outskirts of Sacramento, he spent most of his childhood dreaming of a life far away from the struggles he witnessed at home. After his father's passing and his mother's ill health, Jacob took on responsibility early. He labored in menial jobs, saved every penny, and nurtured the dream of building an empire in Los Angeles. Over the years, he forged powerful connections, invested in lucrative ventures, and climbed the social ladder with surprising speed. When he first met Serena Hastings at a charity event, she was everything he wasn't: born into wealth, educated at a prestigious private school, refined in manner and taste. Serena radiated a quiet confidence that drew Jacob in. Their courtship was swift and passionate. Friends whispered behind their backs that a girl of Serena's breeding would never truly belong with a man who fought his way up from nothing. But they married anyway, forging a partnership of ambition and love, or so Jacob believed. Yet beneath the facade of their perfect union lay a tense imbalance. Serena discovered that climbing the social elite's ladder took more than money. It required constant appearances, unyielding polish, and ironclad secrets. Jacob's business empire, spanning real estate, tech startups, and brand endorsements, consumed most of his time. It also forced them into the public eye. Every misstep was magnified. Every misstatement was headline-worthy. Eventually, the pressure whittled away at their trust. For a time, Jacob and Serena managed. They mingled with Hollywood celebrities, dined at the most exclusive restaurants, and purchased a stately mansion in Beverly Hills, just off Rodeo Drive, a stone's throw from iconic brands like Gucci and Prada. But even in that castle of luxury, cracks began to appear. Late-night fights turned into cold mornings and silent dinners. Their quiet, unspoken resentments threatened to explode. Then one day, without a word, Serena packed her belongings and left. The staff whispered as she slipped away. Jacob, consumed by his expanding empire, initially thought it was just one of her impromptu escapes until days turned to weeks, and weeks to months. In those dark months, Jacob told himself the separation was for the best. He never expected her to come back. But the past has its way of resurfacing, especially when left unresolved. Felicity McAllister entered Jacob's life at a vulnerable time. She was a rising star in the modeling industry, her face splashed across towering billboards in downtown Los Angeles. What caught Jacob's eye was not just her beauty, though she possessed that in spades, but her relentless determination. There was a spark in her eyes, the same kind of hunger he recognized in himself. She too wanted to carve out a world where money, power, and influence flowed with ease. While Jacob was nursing the wounds of Serena's departure, Felicity presented herself as a solution to his loneliness. Their connection began as a business arrangement. Felicity had ambitions of launching a clothing line, and Jacob had the capital to turn her dreams into a reality. Their business meetings evolved into shared dinners, then evenings by the fireplace in Jacob's mansion, discussing future ventures and personal ambitions. Before they knew it, a flirtation turned into a full-blown affair. At first, Felicity was careful about being labeled as someone's mistress. She wanted the world to see her as an independent mogul, a woman who used her modeling credentials as a stepping stone to bigger triumphs. But the promise of Jacob's wealth made her reckless. She relished extravagant gifts, diamond necklaces, high-end designer handbags, and private jets whisking her away for weekend getaways. She told herself it wasn't about the money, that her affection for Jacob was genuine. Yet every glance at the shimmering rings on her fingers reminded her of just how much she had to lose if he ever cast her aside. Jacob, for his part, found Felicity's energy refreshing. She was never afraid to speak her mind, never hesitant to demand attention. In many ways, she was the polar opposite of Serena, who had always been more reserved, more cautious about displays of extravagance. To the outside world, Felicity appeared to be the perfect partner, someone who enjoyed the social spotlight, relished the paparazzi flashes, and sparkled in every social event, from fundraisers to movie premieres. Meanwhile, Jacob's business empire thrived with Felicity at his side. She brought a new wave of publicity and glamour to every venture they touched. Still, at quiet moments late at night, Jacob could not escape the echoes of Serena's laughter in the silent halls of the mansion. But with Felicity sleeping soundly beside him, he convinced himself that the chapters with Serena were permanently closed. The gears of his opulent life turned on, oblivious to the storm that was about to erupt. Los Angeles society quickly embraced the relationship between Jacob and Felicity. Tabloid magazines clamored for pictures of them at black tie events. Social media influencers gushed over Felicity's designer outfits and began tagging her in fashion trend posts. Her star was on the rise, and Jacob's empire continued to expand with the publicity she drew. They became the it couple, frequently spotted at high-profile gatherings, forging alliances with celebrities, hedge fund investors, and real estate tycoons alike. But not everyone was impressed. Old friends of Jacob, who'd known him since his early days with Serena, whispered behind his back about how quickly he'd replaced his wife. The staff at his mansion still referred to Serena as Miss S. Whitmore in hushed tones, and spoke only politely to Felicity when necessary. Even a few of Jacob's closest associates, who had always respected the quiet elegance Serena brought into his life, weren't entirely warm to Felicity's more ostentatious style. She was glitzy, brash, and sometimes even snobbish. Felicity, however, grew comfortable in her new role. She redecorated portions of the Beverly Hills mansion, throwing away items Serena had once chosen. Dripping crystals replaced tasteful chandeliers, modern art sculptures emerged in place of subdued oil paintings, and she had the staff change the floral arrangements daily to reflect her mood. Every corner of the mansion began to reflect Felicity's preferences, slowly erasing traces of Serena. Despite her outward confidence, a nagging insecurity clung to Felicity. She knew that Serena's departure had been abrupt and mysterious. There were rumors about heartbreak, secrets, and irreconcilable differences, but no concrete details. Jacob rarely spoke of his ex-wife. He insisted the marriage had simply run its course, but Felicity sensed that the story was not so simple. Whenever she asked too many questions, Jacob would change the subject or become unusually quiet. In the meantime, Felicity found solace in the fact that Serena was gone, nowhere in sight, presumably never to return. Each passing day felt like another victory. She had Jacob's ear, his heart, or so she believed, and certainly his wallet. The staff might not have accepted her fully, but she consoled herself with the knowledge that, in due time, she would cement her place as the one and only mistress of the Whitmore estate. That confidence would prove to be her downfall. Felicity never accounted for the power of unfinished business, of the haunting ties that bind people who once shared something real. Every so often, she'd catch a flicker of doubt in Jacob's eyes, a spark of memory when Serena's name was mentioned. She dismissed it as residual guilt he must still harbor. After all, their relationship was perfect. Nothing could disrupt it. Or so she thought. It was a late afternoon when the first sign of trouble arrived. Felicity was in the living room, admiring her reflection in a gilded mirror that she had specially commissioned from an exclusive artisan in Florence. She was about to step out to meet a fashion designer who planned to headline her new clothing line launch. Just before she could call for her driver, the doorbell chimed. In most large mansions, a doorbell was a trivial sound. But in Jacob's meticulously guarded estate, such a ring was rare. Visitors were strictly vetted. Felicity's brows furrowed. She heard the butler's footsteps echo across the marble floors as he headed toward the entrance. A moment later he returned, face slightly paler than usual. "Madam," he said calmly, "there is a woman at the door asking for Mr. Whitmore." Felicity toyed with her ring. Did she have an appointment? "No, madam," he said, his voice taut. "She says her name is Serena Hastings." A chill rippled through Felicity. That name was never spoken openly within these walls. She steadied herself and forced a casual tone. "Send her away. Mr. Whitmore is busy." The butler cleared his throat. "She insists. She also appears to be pregnant. Quite far along, in fact." For a moment, Felicity's world spun. She closed her eyes and tried to think logically. Pregnancy could be a lie, a ploy, or a coincidence. But why would Serena Hastings show up, pregnant, after disappearing for 3 years? Fury and curiosity waged war inside Felicity. She marched to the door, half expecting to see an imposter. Instead, standing on the doorstep was indeed Serena, her once petite frame, now accented by the unmistakable curve of late pregnancy. Their eyes met. A torrent of complicated history flooded the space between them. Felicity tried to form words, but they stuck in her throat. How could she greet the woman whose life she had, in some sense, supplanted? Serena's hand unconsciously moved to her belly, as though protecting it from Felicity's glare. "I need to see Jacob," Serena said, her voice unwavering. "It's urgent." Felicity forced a laugh, but it came out hollow. "Do you really think you can just waltz back in here after all this time?" Serena's gaze didn't falter. "Believe me, I wouldn't be here if I had any other choice." Before Felicity could hurl another barb, Jacob appeared at the top of the grand staircase. His face lost all color as he saw Serena, pregnant, at his doorstep. In that moment, Felicity realized that her shimmering life of luxury might be poised to shatter into 1,000,000 pieces. Jacob stood frozen at the top of the stairs for what felt like a painfully long minute. His shock was palpable, and as he finally descended, one step at a time, Felicity detected a flicker of something like relief in his eyes, relief or panic. She couldn't tell which. When he spoke, his voice was careful, as though he feared any sudden movement might upend the moment. "Serena," he breathed, "what are you doing here?" She squared her shoulders and caught her breath, her gaze fixed on him. "I need to talk to you." Her voice was calm, but the tension behind it was evident. Jacob shot a quick glance at Felicity, who glared back as though demanding answers. "Let's go somewhere private," he finally said, gesturing toward the living room, where plush velvet couches and an ornate fireplace offered a semblance of comfort. Felicity hesitated, then followed them at a slight distance. She refused to be dismissed, not when the ghost of Jacob's past had just shown up, pregnant no less. The staff, sensing the gravity of the situation, quickly melted into the background. Jacob gestured for Serena to sit, but she remained standing, one hand resting protectively over her abdomen. "We need to talk about this baby," she said plainly. Felicity swallowed hard, her heart thumping in her chest. She fought the urge to snap at Serena to leave, but she knew she had no authority here. Jacob, on the other hand, stared at Serena as though trying to piece together a jigsaw puzzle of lost memories. "Is it mine?" His words stumbled out, quiet but resolute. Serena's silence was answer enough. She finally sank onto the couch, looking as though the weight of the past months had drained her. "I left you because I couldn't bear the life we were living," she began, her voice quivering. "I felt trapped, Jacob. You were so obsessed with the business, with image, with your climb to the top, that you never saw what it was doing to us." Jacob swallowed, guilt flashing across his features. Felicity stood off to the side, arms crossed over her chest, feeling an acute sense of intrusion. All this time, she had believed Jacob was the wronged party, that Serena had abandoned him. But now she heard the crack in Serena's voice, saw the tears that threatened to spill. The narrative was more complicated than Felicity had assumed. As Serena's words spilled out, Felicity realized that beneath all the glamour, behind every paparazzi shot and social media update, lay a raw story of heartbreak. She clung to the hope that Serena's return would be short-lived. Yet, deep down, Felicity feared it was just the beginning of the kind of upheaval she never anticipated. Jacob led Serena into his private study, a room rarely entered by anyone except his most trusted associates. It was adorned with bookshelves stretching to the ceiling, leather-bound volumes of business strategies and classical literature sharing space. The windows faced the sweeping gardens, offering a serene view that belied the turmoil inside the mansion. Felicity trailed behind, determined not to be excluded from whatever revelation was about to unfold. Serena took a seat in one of the study's comfortable armchairs, struggling to hide her fatigue. Pregnancy was etched into every line of her face, and even though she tried to maintain her poise, her exhaustion was apparent. Jacob pulled a seat close, concern mingling with confusion. Felicity perched on the edge of a chaise lounge, arms folded defensively. "I never intended to come back," Serena admitted. "I had every intention of staying far away from this world. But when I discovered I was pregnant, I knew I had to let you know the truth." Her voice wavered. I couldn't go through this alone, and no matter how much pain we caused each other, you deserve to know your child." Jacob struggled to find words. He had questions swirling through his mind. Where had Serena been all this time? Why hadn't she called sooner? What did she want now? But in that moment, all he managed was a hushed, "How far along are you?" Serena gently placed a hand on her belly. 7 months. "I learned I was pregnant just weeks after I left. By the time I confirmed it, I was too scared to reach out. I wasn't sure how you'd react. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do." Her gaze flickered to Felicity momentarily before returning to Jacob. Felicity's heart pounded in her chest. The timeline meant that around the same time she had begun her affair with Jacob, Serena was already pregnant with his child. The realization made her stomach twist with guilt and resentment. Jacob inhaled deeply, as though preparing for a marathon of emotional confessions. "Serena, he hesitated, then shot a glance at Felicity. In his mind, he was juggling complicated loyalties, uncertain how to navigate these rocky waters. But Felicity couldn't keep silent any longer. "You show up out of the blue, pregnant, and expect Jacob to just, drop everything for you?" She tried to keep the tremor out of her voice. Serena lifted her gaze. "This is his child," she said simply. "He has every right to be part of its life." And with that, a sense of finality settled in the room, as though the destiny of each person present had just been sealed. The secrets Jacob thought he'd buried were beginning to surface, and Felicity, glittering mistress that she was, could do little but watch the unraveling of the life she had painstakingly crafted. Felicity watched Serena from across the study, her heart thrashing in her chest like a caged animal. The sudden reappearance of Jacob's ex-wife, 7 months pregnant, threatened every aspect of the life Felicity had meticulously curated. She felt cornered, like a lioness defending her territory against an intruder. The tension in the room was almost suffocating, with Jacob standing by the broad mahogany desk, Serena perched on the very edge of a chair, and Felicity rooted near the doorway, arms folded tightly across her chest. At first, only silence prevailed, thick and charged with the weight of unspoken accusations. Then Felicity's voice sliced through the quiet. "Let's be honest here," she began, hardly able to contain the tremor in her tone. "You left Jacob vanished for 3 years without any explanation. Now you show up unannounced, nearly 8 months pregnant? It's too convenient." Her words came out sharper than intended, but she was past caring about decorum. Jacob visibly tensed. In the flickering lamplight, the tightness in his jaw betrayed his frustration. "Felicity, that's enough," he said sternly. "I know you're upset, but Serena wouldn't lie about something like this." "Wouldn't she?" Felicity snapped, whirling to face Serena. Her fury pulsed just beneath the surface, fueled by the all-too-real possibility that Serena's pregnancy was precisely what it seemed to be, the return of a life Felicity had believed was long gone. "You left him, Serena. You come from a wealthy background, you had a perfect life, or so you said, and then you just walked out with no word. Who's to say you haven't fabricated the whole story about this baby just to worm your way back in?" Serena, clutching the armrests of her chair, straightened her back. Despite the pallor in her cheeks, she held Felicity's gaze with surprising composure. "I understand your doubts," she said, voice low but steady, "but the child is Jacob's. I'm not here to swindle anyone. If there were any other way, I wouldn't be in this house right now. Believe me." Jacob took a few steps forward, as though trying to physically position himself between the two women. "Felicity," he began, turning to her, "Serena and I need to talk privately." His voice, though calm, brooked no argument. That simple request felt like a physical blow to Felicity. Her lips parted in protest, but the look in Jacob's eyes, somber, focused, shut her down. She snatched her handbag from the nearby table, spun on her heels, and stormed out. The echo of the study door slamming reverberated through the hallway. Now alone with Serena, Jacob leaned back against the desk and exhaled, pressing his thumb and forefinger to the bridge of his nose as though warding off a headache. Outside, twilight was descending over the manicured gardens of the Whitmore estate, casting elongated shadows across the Persian rug. A hush fell, broken only by the muffled ticking of the grandfather clock near the window. "Serena," he said, voice quieter now, "I have 1,000 questions running through my head, and I can't seem to find the right place to start." He paused, his gaze flicking to her rounded belly. "I'm still processing the fact that you're back and pregnant." Serena folded her hands in her lap. She had always been poised, Jacob remembered, but tonight she looked vulnerable in ways he had never seen before. "I know," she murmured, lowering her eyes. "I never wanted to return under these circumstances." A shaky breath escaped her. "After I left, I felt suffocated by what our life had become. We seemed more like business partners than husband and wife. I kept trying to reach you, but you were always locked away in negotiations or investor meetings. There was no room for real communication." Jacob felt a flash of guilt. His intense drive to grow his empire had consumed his days and nights. Private jets, boardroom deals, flashy social events, it had all felt necessary at the time. "I would have stopped if you'd told me," he protested softly, though a note of doubt crept into his voice. Had he truly been willing to listen? Serena seemed to read his hesitation. "I tried, Jacob," she said, her voice trembling, "but every conversation ended with a phone call. You couldn't ignore, or a dinner meeting you had to attend. So I made excuses for you, until I couldn't anymore. Then I found out I was pregnant." She paused, looking away, as her throat bobbed with the effort not to cry. By the time I'd worked up the nerve to tell you, it felt too late. You seemed consumed by a world that had no place for a child. Guilt stabbed at Jacob's chest. He had prided himself on being a man of responsibility, building an empire so grand it would secure any future. And yet, in his single-minded pursuit, he had neglected the one person he had once vowed to cherish. "You should have called," he whispered. Serena's eyes shone with unshed tears. "I wanted to. But I was afraid you'd see this baby as just another inconvenience. I was scared that you'd resent me for complicating your life." He ran a hand over his face, feeling the weight of regret. "Serena, I'm not that heartless. I know that now," she said gently, "but back then, I was lost. Every day away from you made it harder to come back. And when I finally realized I couldn't raise this baby alone, I knew I had to let you know." Jacob inhaled, steadying himself. "I'm not going to abandon you," he said, words tinged with quiet determination. "Or this child. I need to be involved." Serena nodded, her tense shoulders sagging in relief. "That's all I want, Jacob." They lapsed into silence once more, each grappling with a swirl of memories and emotions. For Jacob, it was the recollection of Serena's laughter echoing through these very halls, the promise of a future they had both once pictured. For Serena, it was the realization that the man before her was different from the one she had left older, perhaps wiser, yet still capable of immense tenderness. At last, Jacob glanced toward the study door, recalling Felicity's devastated expression as she left. "I need to talk to Felicity," he said. "She's feeling threatened, and I can't blame her. We've built something together in your absence. Maybe not a perfect relationship, but it's real." Serena winced as she tried to adjust her position, the weight of her abdomen making simple movements cumbersome. "I don't want to come between you two," she insisted softly. "I realize Felicity must be scared and angry. She doesn't know me, and as far as she's concerned, I'm the person who hurt you. Or maybe she thinks I'm here to steal you back." Jacob glanced at her. "Are you?" She hesitated, her gaze flicking to the shadows dancing on the walls. "I'm here because of the baby," she answered. "But I'd be lying if I said my feelings for you are gone. You were my husband, Jacob. Those bonds don't just vanish." His heart lurched at the admission, a tangled swirl of guilt, longing, and responsibility coalescing into a knot in his chest. "We'll need time," he said eventually, "to figure out what this means. But first, we need to calm the storm in this house. Right now, Felicity's consumed by fear, and you're exhausted." She nodded in agreement, though her eyes conveyed lingering sadness. Jacob stepped toward the door, intending to find Felicity and attempt some measure of damage control. At the threshold, he paused, glancing over his shoulder at Serena, who sat with her hands protectively clasped around her belly. "I'm sorry for everything," he said, voice raw, "but I promise you, no matter what happens between us, this baby will have a father." Her lips curved into a faint, grateful smile. "Thank you, Jacob." And so he departed, leaving Serena alone with her anxieties, while beyond the study walls, Felicity stewed in her fury. The storm of accusations raged on within the mansion, echoing through shadowed hallways and capturing the hearts of everyone caught in its midst. Each person felt the suffocating pressure of questions left unanswered and choices yet to be made, unsure whether a new beginning or complete destruction awaited at daybreak. Felicity retreated to her personal suite, formerly a guest room, until she'd redecorated it in her own bold style. The walls were lined with full-length mirrors and mannequins dressed in prototype outfits for her upcoming clothing line. She slammed the door and leaned against it, trying to steady the anger burning inside her. She had known Jacob had a complicated past with Serena, but she never anticipated Serena returning, pregnant. "What if the baby is truly his?" she muttered to herself, pacing the glossy hardwood floor. "What happens then?" The question echoed through her mind, stirring her insecurities. She recalled the way Jacob had once spoken about Serena, even during their separation, with a fondness he rarely showed for anyone else. A sense of dread washed over her. Striding over to the mirrored vanity, she caught a glimpse of her reflection. Her face was flushed, her eyes rimmed with anxiety. She'd worked tirelessly to achieve her current status, bestowed with the love and financial backing of one of the wealthiest men in Los Angeles. The possibility of losing it all because his ex-wife had resurfaced felt like a betrayal. He hadn't even consulted her before asking her to leave the study. She was his partner now, wasn't she? Just then, her phone buzzed a text from her publicist, asking about the final guest list for the fashion line launch. Felicity's stomach turned. How could she think about business at a time like this? Still, she typed a curt response. Handling a personal emergency. Will confirm tomorrow. She tossed her phone onto the bed, crossing her arms in a futile attempt at self-comfort. She considered barging back into the study, but pride held her back. Instead, she breathed in, counting to 10. She had to play this smart. She had to keep her composure if she wanted to maintain her position. So she hatched a plan. She would bide her time, gather information, and ensure Jacob wouldn't be able to push her aside so easily. Felicity thought about calling her close friend, a socialite with connections to many high-end lawyers. If push came to shove, she wanted to be prepared. The vow formed in her mind, no one, not even Serena Hastings, will steal Jacob away from me. And though she didn't know it yet, that very vow would light the fuse on a chain of events that neither she nor Jacob could control. Back in the study, Jacob's gaze drifted to the old family portraits still hanging on the walls, images of him and Serena in happier times, a tropical vacation photo, a formal gala snapshot, and a candid shot of the two of them laughing in a park. Serena noticed his lingering stare. "Those were good times," she said softly. Jacob nodded, his voice strained. "We had dreams together, Serena. I thought we'd build a future, a family. Then you left." She swallowed hard, running her fingers over the curve of her belly. "I know. I never wanted to hurt you, but I needed to find myself. The world you introduced me to was suffocating. We became more of a business partnership than a marriage. I felt lost in the constant swirl of press conferences, charity galas, and dinner parties with people whose names I barely remembered." Jacob's expression softened. "You should have told me." "I tried, Jacob. You were always busy. I made excuses for you, told myself you'd see my unhappiness. Then I realized I was losing more of myself every day." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. "Please understand, I didn't want to do it this way." A wave of exhaustion washed over Serena, and Jacob finally gestured for her to remain seated. "How are you managing, Serena? Are you healthy?" he asked, concern evident in his tone. She nodded. "I've had to see a private doctor in Seattle. That's where I've been staying. It's been hard, but I'm managing." Jacob exhaled slowly, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Here was his ex-wife, pregnant with his child, and the woman he currently shared his life with was fuming upstairs. "I won't abandon you or this child," he finally said, his voice hushed but resolute. "I want to be part of its life." Serena's posture relaxed, relief briefly illuminating her features. She reached into her purse and withdrew a small ultrasound photo, handing it to him. Jacob held it in trembling hands, his throat tight. In that grainy black and white image, he saw the future life he'd helped create. For a moment, all the noise in his world fell away. No paparazzi, no business deals, no lavish parties. Just him, Serena, and the child they were about to bring into this complicated world. When he finally glanced up, Serena saw tears shining in his eyes, tears he rarely let anyone else see. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. And in that moment, Jacob realized just how tangled his heart had become, how split his loyalties were between the woman he once loved with all his soul and the mistress who now dominated his life. With the ultrasound photo still clutched in his hand, Jacob felt the gravity of the decision before him. He had always prided himself on controlling every aspect of his world, from the boardroom to the paparazzi-laden red carpets. Now, he was grappling with emotional chaos beyond his grasp. "I need time to think about how to handle this," he said quietly, setting the ultrasound on the desk. "Serena, you can stay here while we sort this out. There are plenty of guest rooms." She opened her mouth to protest, glancing warily around at the house that used to be hers. "I don't want to intrude. I can stay at a hotel." Jacob shook his head. "That's out of the question. The reporters will scent blood the moment they find out you're back, especially if you start checking into a high-end hotel in Beverly Hills while visibly pregnant. It'd be a feeding frenzy. I'd rather keep everything contained here under my protection." It was a pragmatic decision, but Serena couldn't ignore the sense of relief that washed over her. She was exhausted, emotionally and physically. At least this arrangement would buy her some time to figure out her next steps. "Thank you," she managed. "I appreciate it." Jacob stood and led her to one of the second-floor guest rooms. The hallway felt eerily familiar to her, even though new artwork and furnishings marked Felicity's territory. Every step brought back memories, some good, some painful. When they reached a tastefully decorated room at the end of the corridor, Serena entered, setting her small suitcase on the floor. Jacob lingered in the doorway, looking uneasy. "We'll talk more tomorrow. For now, get some rest." She nodded, turning back to face him. "Jacob, I'm sorry." Her voice wavered with genuine regret. He paused, forcing a small, sad smile. "Me too." And then he was gone, leaving her in the silence of a home she once called her own. Down the hallway, Felicity stood partially concealed behind a decorative pillar, watching every second of their exchange. Her jaw was set, her eyes cold. As soon as she heard Jacob's footsteps approaching, she ducked away, but not before catching the gentle way he had touched Serena's arm, guiding her into the guest room. Jealousy flared in Felicity's chest, hot and undeniable. The ties that bound Jacob and Serena were not easily severed, and Felicity now felt them tightening around her own life, threatening to tear apart everything she had fought to secure. The following morning, whispers filled the mansion's corridors. The staff, who had long revered Serena as the real Miss S. Whitmore, found themselves torn between quiet excitement and wariness. They had grown accustomed to Felicity's rule, her lavish demands, her occasional temper, but many still remembered Serena's gentle kindness. Felicity woke to find her world still upended. She summoned her closest ally on the staff, a housekeeper named Brianna, for updates. The woman's eyes flickered with pity as she set a breakfast tray down on Felicity's dresser. "Miss S. Hastings spent the night in the Rose Suite," Brianna reported softly. "Mr. Whitmore had the chef prepare a special breakfast for her." Felicity's cheeks burned with envy. In an uncharacteristically sharp tone, she snapped, "Fine, I'll dine here. Tell the chef I want a full brunch spread, something with caviar. And keep me updated on any movement in the house." Brianna bowed her head and scurried out. Several hours later, Felicity found Jacob in his office, staring at the ultrasound photo. She carefully closed the door behind her. "We need to talk," she said, voice carefully controlled. He gestured for her to sit, but Felicity remained standing, arms crossed. "Is the child really yours?" she asked bluntly. "You can't just take her word for it." Jacob frowned. "I believe her. Serena wouldn't lie about something so serious." Felicity's frustration rose. "So, what does that mean for us? Am I supposed to accept this new reality without question?" Jacob set the ultrasound aside. "I'm not sure what it means yet, but I owe it to my child to be there. And I want to make sure Serena is all right." Felicity studied him, searching for any hint of uncertainty. Instead, she found resolve in his eyes, a resolve that made her feel excluded. She pressed her lips together. "I love you, Jacob, but I won't stand by and watch you replace me with her." He looked up, surprised by her vulnerability. "I'm not replacing you, aren't you?" she countered, her voice trembling with both anger and heartbreak. "She's the ex-wife you never truly moved on from. If you get close to her again, I'll be out in the cold." Jacob rose from his chair, crossing over to place a hand gently on Felicity's arm. "We'll figure this out together," he said, though his tone lacked complete conviction. But Felicity didn't miss the flicker in his eyes, that familiar hesitation whenever he spoke of Serena. And it cut deeper than she cared to admit, making her wonder if the price of her betrayal, of stepping into Serena's shoes, was about to come due. By midday, the atmosphere in the mansion crackled with tension. Serena had ventured downstairs to explore the house and was greeted with polite deference by the staff. She was acutely aware that Felicity ruled these halls now, but old memories tugged at her as she passed the drawing room, where she and Jacob once hosted intimate gatherings for close friends. She paused, remembering the laughter and music that once filled the space. Felicity, meanwhile, hovered nearby. She made a show of breezing through the halls, greeting staff with an extra loud cheeriness, as though to assert her authority. Whenever she spotted Serena, she offered a tight-lipped smile that never reached her eyes. Jacob, caught in the middle, tried to distract himself with work, fielding calls about a tech startup he was investing in. But he couldn't concentrate. Thoughts of Serena and the child growing inside her hijacked his mind. Every time his phone buzzed, he half expected some news reporter to have gotten wind of Serena's return. He was determined to protect her until they figured out their next step. Late in the afternoon, Jacob arranged a small luncheon in the sunroom, hoping to ease the tension between the two women. He invited Serena and Felicity to join him. The three of them gathered around a polished oak table set with fine china and fresh floral centerpieces. The sound of distant water fountains in the garden provided a serene backdrop that belied the undercurrent of hostility. Serena picked at her salad, aware of Felicity's watchful glare. Felicity barely touched her food, her posture rigid and defensive. Jacob tried to steer the conversation toward neutral topics like the upcoming charity gala for the Los Angeles Children's Hospital, but his efforts fell flat. "So," Jacob ventured, eyes darting from Serena to Felicity, "maybe we can discuss living arrangements once the baby's born." He tried to keep his tone diplomatic. "Serena, I want you to have everything you need. Doctors, support, whatever it takes." Felicity forced a smile. "Yes, of course. We wouldn't want your child lacking anything." Serena sensed the veiled barb in Felicity's words, but chose not to engage. She offered a nod. "Thank you." The sunroom's warmth felt stifling. Everyone seemed relieved when the meal ended, giving them an excuse to flee the table. Jacob had intended this luncheon as a step toward unity, but instead, the tension only deepened, like storm clouds rolling in over the horizon, and none of them could predict which bolt of lightning would strike first. Over the next few days, the fractures in the mansion's delicate truce widened. Serena spent much of her time resting, reading books on parenting, and conferring with her doctor back in Seattle via video calls. Felicity, meanwhile, wrestled with a maelstrom of emotions that she couldn't quite contain. Jealousy, fear, and a simmering anger toward Serena churned inside her. She snapped at house staff for minor mistakes and often locked herself in her room to brood. Jacob tried to play peacemaker. He checked in on Serena frequently, ensuring she had whatever she needed: prenatal vitamins, preferred snacks, comfortable bedding. He also tried to reassure Felicity of his commitment to her. But despite his best intentions, something had shifted. Felicity could feel it in his touch, in the way he absently glanced at his phone, waiting for updates from Serena's doctor. She began to suspect Jacob was drifting away from her, drawn back into Serena's orbit by the unborn child. One evening, Felicity made a bold move. She walked into Jacob's study, wearing a stunning designer gown, an outfit she planned to wear for an upcoming fashion gala. She closed the door and struck a pose, letting the silk fabric cascade elegantly around her. "What do you think?" she asked, forcing a playful tone. Jacob, eyes tired from hours of brokering a business deal, looked up and mustered a faint smile. "You look beautiful." But Felicity noticed how his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Undeterred, she approached him, leaning over his desk to plant a kiss on his lips. It was meant to spark desire, to remind him of what they had. He returned the kiss, but the moment felt brief and obligatory. She stepped back, struggling to mask her disappointment. "Jacob, we need to talk about us," he sighed, removing his reading glasses. "I know, it's just. This situation is complicated. I need to ensure Serena's well-being. The baby changes everything." Felicity's composure cracked. "But we built this life together. Or at least I thought we did. Now you're acting like you're obligated to fix things with her. Don't I matter?" Jacob stood, reaching for her hand. "Of course you matter. I love you. But my child, our child, needs me." At that, Felicity's face paled. "Our child?" she echoed. Perhaps it was a slip of the tongue, but it sounded more like a subtle claim that he and Serena shared something unbreakable. She stormed out, leaving Jacob alone in his study, consumed by guilt. In that moment, Felicity felt karma's harsh sting. She had once reveled in prying Jacob away from his marriage. Now Serena's reappearance threatened to steal back not only the man she loved, but the future she believed was already hers. That night, a brutal confrontation erupted. Felicity had spent the entire day stewing in her jealousy, replaying in her mind every tender moment she had witnessed between Jacob and Serena. It was late when she found Serena in the downstairs library, gazing at a row of classic novels, admiring what used to be yours. Felicity's voice sliced through the quiet air. Serena turned, startled but composed. "I'm just looking around. I couldn't sleep." Felicity folded her arms, her posture rigid. "You should leave. This isn't your home anymore." Serena regarded Felicity calmly. "Jacob asked me to stay. He wants to ensure the baby is safe." Felicity let out a harsh laugh. "Jacob wants a lot of things. He wants his empire. He wants a mistress. And now he wants his ex-wife back. Do you really think he's going to give you a happily ever after?" Serena's face tightened, but she kept her voice level. "I'm not here for a fairy tale. I'm here because my child deserves a father." Felicity's anger flared. "And I deserve to be the only woman in this house." She glared at Serena's swollen belly. "I won't let you manipulate him with that baby." Serena took a step forward, her expression resolute. "Jacob might have his faults, but he's not a fool. This baby's existence isn't manipulation, it's reality. If you can't handle that, it's your problem, not mine." Before Felicity could unleash another torrent of accusations, Jacob appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. "What's going on here?" he demanded, taking in the tense standoff. Felicity rounded on him, tears brimming in her eyes. "Don't you see what she's doing? She's trying to wedge herself back into your life, using this baby to tear us apart." Jacob's face darkened. "That's enough, Felicity. Serena isn't trying to tear anyone apart." Hearing the protective note in his voice, Felicity felt her last shred of composure dissolve. She stormed out, her footsteps echoing across the marble floor, leaving Jacob and Serena in the library's hush. Serena let out a shaky breath. "I never wanted this hostility." Jacob pressed his fingers to his temples. "I know. But we've all made choices, and now we're facing the consequences. I just hope we can find a way to handle them without destroying each other." But as the evening wore on, it seemed the illusions they had each clung to of control, love, and simple resolutions were crumbling faster than anyone could repair. 2 weeks passed in strained cohabitation. Serena's due date crept closer, and with it, the tension in the Whitmore household reached near unbearable levels. Jacob juggled frantic business calls, trying to finalize acquisitions and keep the press at bay. He'd successfully concealed Serena's presence thus far, but whispers about an ex-wife sighting circulated in exclusive social circles. Felicity found it increasingly difficult to tolerate Serena's calm composure. The more she lashed out, slamming doors, criticizing the staff, or throwing luxurious parties to distract herself, the more Serena retreated into quiet dignity. In her lucid moments, Felicity glimpsed the bigger picture. Serena was genuinely vulnerable, near the end of her pregnancy, and had no desire to orchestrate a drama. But Felicity's fear of abandonment fueled her resentment. Then, one evening, Serena's health took a sudden turn. It started with mild discomfort and escalated to sharp pains that left her gasping. She clutched her belly, alarmed by the intensity. Jacob, alarmed, rushed her to the hospital. Felicity followed, caught between compassion and jealousy, her heart pounding as she watched Jacob hover over Serena like a guardian angel. At the hospital, the doctors discovered that Serena's blood pressure was dangerously high, risking complications for both mother and child. They recommended an emergency procedure if it didn't stabilize. Seeing Serena pale and frightened, Felicity found herself unexpectedly empathizing. Despite everything, the woman was about to bring a new life into the world, and she was doing it alone, with no family except the man they both loved. As the clock ticked in the stark white corridors, Felicity felt a pang of guilt. She remembered how she'd once taken pride in stepping into Serena's place, never considering the emotional cost. Now she saw the fragility of it all. If something happened to Serena or the baby, there would be no celebration of victory, only irreversible tragedy. Jacob paced the hallway, phone in hand, calling specialists and bombarding the staff with questions about Serena's condition. Finally, a nurse emerged, explaining they would attempt to lower Serena's blood pressure through medication and monitoring. Felicity saw the relief in Jacob's eyes, and something in her softened. In that tense vigil, Felicity realized she stood on the brink of a choice: continue down a path of resentment and fear, or step up in support of the person carrying the man's child. It was a moment of reckoning that could reshape all their destinies. The hospital lights seemed to hum with anticipation as Serena's condition slowly stabilized. Jacob remained at her bedside, holding her hand, whispering reassurances that everything would be okay. Occasionally, Felicity hovered in the doorway, hesitant but unwilling to walk away. For the first time, she felt a genuine kinship to the woman she had viewed as an enemy. Watching Serena lie there, vulnerable and frightened, reminded Felicity that they were both living in Jacob's world, both fighting for a sense of security. Late that night, in the dim glow of overhead fluorescence, Felicity found the courage to enter Serena's room. Serena, weary and medicated but still alert, looked up. There was no hostility in her gaze, just a quiet acceptance. Felicity cleared her throat. "I'm sorry," she began, words catching in her throat. "I haven't been kind to you." Serena studied her, then gave a small nod. "I understand why. I left Jacob in a confusing situation. Then I just showed up, pregnant. It must have felt like a bomb going off in your life." Felicity exhaled, grateful that Serena recognized the turmoil. "I never imagined I'd feel threatened like this." "I guess I never imagined you'd come back." Serena hesitated, then softly said, "It's not about competing. This baby, I just wanted to have a chance at knowing its father. I'm not here to destroy what you have with Jacob." A lump formed in Felicity's throat. She realized that, for all her cunning and bravado, she was afraid of losing the only love that had ever felt real, even if it began under questionable circumstances. "You've been through so much," she whispered, guilt echoing in her words. Serena's eyes dampened with tears. "We all have, but I think we can choose to move forward without hating each other." At that moment, Felicity felt a flicker of unexpected warmth. She reached out and placed her hand gently atop Serena's. The tension between them lingered, but was tempered by an unspoken understanding. They were both connected to Jacob, and soon to a new life that needed love more than it needed conflict. When dawn broke over Los Angeles, bathing the hospital corridor in soft, rose-colored light, Jacob found the two women in quiet conversation. He watched them with tentative hope, recognizing the possibility that, through all the drama and heartbreak, a fragile peace might be blossoming. And with it came the dawn of truth. Love's complexities could crush or heal, destroy or elevate, depending on the choices they all made. In the end, Serena delivered a healthy baby girl, bringing a new chapter of possibility into all their lives. Jacob, now a father, discovered that true wealth meant more than money. It meant the capacity to shoulder responsibility with integrity and compassion. Felicity, once a mistress eclipsed by her own fears, found a surprising sense of purpose in embracing a supportive role, forging an unexpected truce with Serena. And Serena, after so many years of running, settled into the knowledge that she could co-parent peacefully without losing herself. Yet this story isn't just about heartbreak and betrayal. It's about owning the consequences of our actions and discovering that karma, while sometimes punishing, can also pave the way for renewal. If you enjoyed this journey filled with twists, revelations, and ultimate redemption, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more stories of love, drama, and hope to life.